All right, let's see if anybody remembers anything from Tuesday. It seems like a long time ago. And those of you that are going to the baseball game, you've got to block that out of your mind and focus on international trade for a few seconds. Did we talk about that last time? Yeah, I might be going crazy, but... All right, somebody tell me why we don't need to worry about this balance of trade issue, this trade deficit, and all these scary languages that we have. Yeah.
Because what they don't get in money, they have in product.
Okay, yeah, the trade deficit only tracks the flow of cash. And if that's all you track, we're all in a world of hurt. I give the bank my mortgage payment every month, and they just keep taking it from me. Right? But if you factor in that I have a house that I'm living in, I would gladly give them the money and have a house. I suppose I could convert it all to $1 bills and maybe make some sort of structure to live in, but it wouldn't be very comfortable. All right, so I'm happy with the exchange. And the balance of trade, all it does is track the money. Doesn't track the goods that are being traded back and forth. Okay, so really from an economic perspective, there's nothing to worry about. It's not even something that needs to be tracked. It'd be like, I don't know, maybe claiming that your grade in government class is based upon the number of fish in the lake. So you're down there, with sonars and things trying to count the number of fish, and when the count gets down, then you start hearing these scary reports about government class grades going down. I mean, you look at that and say, well, that's nothing to track. That's really not important. And the same thing is true here. Right? It really is not significant. So now the number of fish in the lake is important for other things because they taste really good, but that's not for the government grade. All right, anything else about why we shouldn't, this balance of trade isn't something really to track? Maybe some illustrations or something we talked about to point it out. Jacob's willing to answer. Everyone's willing to let Jacob answer. He's not willing to answer. All right. I used an example of you personally or a family and Walmart or whatever store you want to pick. Go ahead. Aldi. Food. She's a girl. What about it?
If you give them money, you get goods back. They don't ever give you money.
Yeah. Let's get the drill deals. We have a coupon and it works some cash back thing. All right, so no, whatever store you want to pick, most likely you have a trade deficit. All right, I'm trying to think of anybody ever make things that you take to stores and sell. You have a trade deficit, all right, and I don't walk around worried about Walmart crushing me into the ground because of my trade deficit with them. Okay. Or Aldi's, I go there frequently, or Jewel when there's the deals, or the Gallup's gas station on 20 as you head to Michigan City. I don't worry about my trade deficit with them and how it's bankrupting me. I'm perfectly satisfied because I'm getting gas back from them. Okay, so for the same reasons that you don't track your trade deficit with all the stores around and you have this monthly report that you put out about the trade deficit and how it's growing and talking these hushed tones about coming economic doom. We would look at that and say, that's stupid. You're buying things there. And all this trade deficit is people buying things from there. All right, it's nothing to track. It is a dinosaur or the evolution of vestigial organ from the evolutionary mindset. Something from an age gone by that, did you get those in biology class? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, anyway, it's from another era. It's based on mercantilistic thinking and based on flawed thinking. It's not something we need to track. All right, then we looked at a couple of ways that countries try to protect themselves from all of this foreign trade. I should back up and mention one thing, that there is at a certain point some international... is that some warning? Wow, some cyber attack. I just heard about a country in South America where they had a bank set up that just got hacked. And they're releasing names of all these people in America that have money there, and I didn't follow it exactly. Yep. I just heard that there's a whole lot of very questionable transactions taking place.
It wasn't just America, it was
Oh, you're right. It was. They were talking about money funneling to terrorist groups and okay. Anyway, so Jacob must be involved with them. We can tell that by the vibration what do you call it, the frequency or the wavelengths or something from that vibration. That's how we can tell it. There is a certain point in national security issues to talk about how we do need to have some capacity to make things. We're not anywhere near there, right? So yes, at some point down the road, possibly, if we were talking about, if we were the island of Guam trying to live independent of everybody else, if that's the case, you want to make some really good treaties with people you trust because you're never going to get there. Right? We're not to that point here. So if someone brings that up, say, yeah, that is a valid question or a valid point, but we're nowhere near that. Right? We have plenty of things to make enough steel. We can pump oil out of the ground. We can make enough things to blow people up that we can go take over those countries and take it back if we need to. So. All right. Then we talked about exchange rates. What is an exchange rate? Wow. What's your favorite flavor cupcake? Just raise your hand. Okay, what's the exchange rate? Yeah, I already picked you.
Do you want an answer? Is the value of one nation's currency compared to another?
Yes. If you're going to go to England, you're going to trade it for the pound. You're going to get so many pounds for the dollar, or for the euro, or the crown, or the kwacha, or the peso, or the rubles, whatever. It's how much that money costs. And it is sometimes, you have to be careful when you're looking at these rates. If you're talking about somebody with rubles buying dollars, they give the numbers differently. So you got to really think about what they're doing. But that's all it is. It's just how much that currency costs, basically. And there is a natural marketplace for this. I mean, it's not something the government needs to regulate. It will handle all by itself. The demand for the currency and the amount of currency available will move this thing around to a natural place. So the government can. I was just thinking about all the creation of money that we're doing. It's expanding the supply, which is going to put some downward pressure even on that exchange rate because there's so much more money available. But that's a little bit of a side issue. Okay, questions about exchange rates? You should all travel internationally to multiple countries.
Is that around?
Yes, over the summer. We will meet in the fall for the last class period, and you can tell me your experiences about the exchange rates.
Is the school paying for it?
Oh, no, this is, we don't pay for your laptops or your paper, your pen, or anything else for your assignments. Why this? Yeah, just throw it in there. Should we coordinate it and everybody pick different countries so we really get a good report when we come back?
Yeah.
Go to Germany. I want to got my eyes on Istanbul. There's a lot of history there. I mean, going back to the Greeks when it was a Greek colony on this. Well, that might happen too, but at least it'll be quick. I mean, for the most part, they behead you or hang you. They're not going to go the Catholic Church route of the months of torture in the basement. So I don't want to die. But, all right. Let's go to the next topic. I think we covered international trade enough. Let's talk about savings. We got a couple of topics here that I think we can hit fairly quickly. They're not insignificant, just what we need to talk about, fairly straightforward. Savings, saving money. And I want to look at just two main things. One, the importance of saving. And then the second thing, just different ways we save money. Right? There are more ways than your sock drawer to save money, or your mattress, wherever you stick it. The freezer, if you go the cold cash route, there's more ways than that. So, all right, importance of savings. Here I got two things to mention about importance of savings. The first one is the importance to you as an individual. It's very important for you to save money. Can anybody think of some reasons? You must have a video feed or something. It does time that pretty good. Why is it important for you to save money?
Personal responsibility.
That's-
Have things to pay for the future.
Okay, planning for the future, provide for future needs.
Do you remember that article I sent you? It was those politicians saying that it was certain liberal politicians who said they have absolutely zero savings. All their money comes right from the the government and then spend it, and that's it.
Yes, yeah, I remember that now. So anyway, it's good for you personally. Hopefully, you are thinking that next fall, there's going to be some expenses coming, if you're coming back to school. You have to buy a textbook possibly. There's going to be a tuition payment, room and board payment. Yeah, so, yeah. Maybe that's what you're holding on for. He also wants to forgive student debt. So I think the number is 43% of students who have graduated and have student debt aren't paying anything on their debt.
Just hoping that he makes it.
They're hoping for a Bernie Sanders win. I mean, most of them weren't paying anyway. When you get a $50,000 school bill and you have a degree that you end up working at McDonald's with, it's really hard to pay that off. And that happens way too much. Anyway, it's good for you personally. How do we get to that? Just save money, planning for the future, planning for your bills in the fall. You're really, really stupid if you show up in August and say, man, I knew there was something I forgot about. I've got to pay for this. Right? You know it's coming. Right? If you have a car, what's coming? Maintenance, repair bills, insurance, plates, wreckage. Is that what you said? That's from a girl, for the record. Wreckage. So, okay. But all those things are coming. All right. I have been caught in a position where I'm thinking back to after some of my children were born. At that point, we had insurance that had a $5,200 deductible, which meant I paid the first $5,200, which hurt. But I also had shortly after that, a car repair. All right. And that also hurt because I'd spent all my savings, right? But it shouldn't be something we get caught flat-footed with. I mean, wow, I got to get new tires? I just did it 3 years ago. Come on. We know those things are coming. All right, so savings, it is just wise use of your money. All right, so it's important for you individually. And that often is what motivates us. The second point is it's also good for society. All right, and hopefully this isn't what motivates you personally. I'm going to go put money in Fifth Third because it's, for the good of America. Wow. You have problems if that's your motivation. But it is true still, nonetheless, that it's good for society. Is that your motivation?
No, the name of that thing just confuses me.
Fifth Third. It's the intersection of Fifth and Third, someplace in Ohio, I've been told.
All I know is they're bad at math.
So, I don't know. I have a free checking account there. I don't complain about it. But you put your money in the bank. It is good for society as a whole. We've talked about this before. How is it good for society? Why is there a need for people to save money? Wouldn't it be better for us to spend that money and generate economic activity? We can go to the restaurant and eat with that money. Then you get a bigger tip. The restaurant gets more money. If it's just sitting in the bank, then it's idle capital. That's the word socialists like to talk about. How is this good for society to just stick that stuff in the bank? Think of Amanda. Joy?
Is it for people if they want to start a business or something they can have money to borrow?
Yeah, business people frequently need to borrow money for different things. I borrowed money to build a house. Okay. That's nice. That's why I have a mortgage payment. But the bank does not have the power of the federal government. It does not have this fancy printer in the vault. It just runs the currency when they need it. It's other people's savings. All right. So when you go to get a mortgage at some point in your life, if nobody saves anything, there's no money. There's nothing to save. Or if there's not enough savings, the interest rate goes very high. Remember, we talked about the interest rate's the price of money. If the supply is really low, the price goes up. All right? And the free market will take care of that. It just doesn't go up indefinitely. Other people, because of their own self-interest, begin to save more money. All right? I have never gone to the bank with money to save thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to help keep the interest rate down. I'll keep the economic engine running smooth. I've never thought that, all right? But it really does help. You could think of it as oil in an engine, or if you've ever dealt with I don't know, I'm thinking of a cable pull, a cable with a wire through it that opens the latch in your hood or something that gets all rusty and doesn't move. Put a little oil or something in there and it helps everything go smoothly. All right, it provides that oil, that lubricant for the economy. So people like Amanda wanting to expand their business, they're going to have to borrow money. When I bought a house, I borrowed money. There are real legitimate uses for borrowing money. It is something very dangerous. It's you want to think about like fire. You don't just go into your living room and make a big bonfire. In the appropriate place, a fire is very good. I have this big metal box in the basement that I make fires in frequently, and it really keeps my house nice and toasty. If it gets out of that box, then we've got problems. So anyway, it is a danger, but there's a real use for it, and it does help the economy go smoothly. Going back to the gumballs with their gumball robber baron in the back. Look at her. I was talking to high school kids about the robber barons. I just think it's amazing. I think it was Rockefeller that gave away more money, I don't know if I mentioned this, than any other person ever owned in American history. That just boggles my mind. But he's still called the robber baron. That's the robber I want to live next to me and come to my house. I'll leave the doors open. But anyway, if there's a shortage on gumballs and her pride and desire to make excessive profits that Hillary Clinton's going to take causes her to want to expand, she probably doesn't have the cash sitting in this little safe behind her desk to build another factory. Or even if she's not going to expand, if she's going to increase production, she's got to buy all the raw material, all the ingredients. That sounds pretty bad when we talk about raw material and making gumballs. Got to buy the ingredients. The stores don't write you a check and say, yeah, we want some gumballs in 4 weeks, and then you go buy the sugar and make the gumballs. She's got to pay for all that up front. And then when the stores pay her for the gumballs, then she pays that stuff off. So there's being able to borrow money helps all of that. So anyway, it's very important for society to do that. If you want to put a fancier term for it there, it provides capital for production. All right, that's capital, money that's been saved that can be used in production. You don't have to use that on a test, but that's, if you hear that phrase, capital, it provides that capital. All right, the last thing with savings is some types of savings or different ways we save. Right? There are more than that might come to mind immediately. And probably if you just think about it, you can think of lots of ways that people save money. All right, hopefully an obvious one is in a savings account. That is a real legitimate way to save money. If you studied much monetary, well, forget that. Savings account, checking account, or should we call it a debit card account? Would that fit better with today's society? Who writes checks anymore? I write a couple checks a year. Whenever we go roller skating during fall push, I usually have the check and I write that out. There's another time. It's just 2 or 3 times a year. My wife does all of her payments online, so she has the bank write the check and send it to them. So, but anyway, checking account, you know the basic thing there. Savings can be accomplished through an insurance policy. I don't think it's the best vehicle for it necessarily, but you can get an insurance policy that once it's paid up, it has a guaranteed payout. Now, if you're really old and your wife is young, she wants this thing because even if you quit making payments, she's getting the lump sum payment. Megan's got to warn whoever she starts to be friendly to. But anyway, so you have savings, and then the insurance company has really massive amounts of savings for them. If you think about the last major hurricane that slammed into Florida or someplace, and all the houses that they have to repair, they have to put that money out. They've got to pay that. These numbers are, really old now. But in 1998, State Farm had almost $25 billion in savings so that they had money to pay out all those claims. So, and other companies have similar amounts. So anyway, insurance provides a vehicle for savings. They also don't have a little safe behind the CEO's desk with $25 billion in it. Right? They do other things with it, but they keep a lot of that liquid so they can pay out claims. So. Okay, yeah. And I'm sure, knowing their federal government, there are regulations on that, so, unfortunately. All right, insurance policy, another one, or insurance companies, which would include the policies. Retirement savings, right? That is included. There's all kinds of vehicles to do that. 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all mostly vehicles that give you some or one or another advantage with your taxes. That's why they have all those different names. But different ways to save for retirement. And that can become substantial very, very quickly. All right. If you work at the mill or just have a regular job and you're saving a reasonable amount of that money, you're going to have several $100,000 at least when you retire. So that does become substantial. So, all right, stocks can be a way to save money. You buy stock in a company. They are taking your cash, so more of like instead of them going to the bank to borrow it, you're giving it directly to the company. When you're buying it directly from the company. Now, we often hear a lot of the stock exchanges. That's where Jacob has some stock in Amanda's company, and Davies wanted to do a hostile takeover. So he's buying up all the stock so that he has more than 51%, and he can kick you out. It becomes Davies cookie or Davies gumballs. Is that any better? Yeah.
Well, depending upon what raw materials I'm using with gumballs, you can have them.
Yeah. Which natural resources are we using? But when we're talking about the stock exchange, that we hear all about that, all that is Jacob has some stock in some company and somebody buys it from him. So it's not getting to the company, but the initial purchase of that stock, the initial public offering, that is when the company is offering these stocks for sale and the money goes to them. So it's a vehicle that provides this capital for companies. That's the idea. And a similar one is through bonds, savings bonds. That's a similar thing to a stock. You're giving money to the company, but in that case, there's no ownership in the company. Do we ever come up with a name for the gumball magnets, enterprise?
You can just say gumball magnets.
Gumball magnets. that gives us an idea of the resources that are getting used. So if she just used some very small numbers, said I'm going to offer 1,000 shares of stock, she would take the whole value of her company and split it up into 1,000 pieces. And if you buy one of those, you own a 1/1000th piece of the company. If you buy 51 of them, you own more than half, and then you can kick Amanda out. That might be worth it. All right. All right. If you buy a bond, there's no ownership. It's basically a loan, and they agree to pay it back, but it provides that capital. So, all right. One more thing to mention here: savings is through land or through your own house. All right. You can buy land. Now, that money doesn't go directly to a business to use unless you bought the land from them. But you are building up savings, owning that land, and at some point, it's going to get sold, and that capital is released to use other places, or your own house. All right, you don't have one yet, but that is can be a substantial way to save money when you retire, when you die, and all the kids come home that haven't been there for 30 years. They're not thinking about, we need that picture from when I was my 5-year-old birthday. I want to have that for the memories. They're coming, I want my share of the profits when the house is sold. Okay, there is some money there. So anyway, saving your house. Savings through your house. So anyway, there are lots of ways we save money, and ultimately that savings, one way or another, provides capital for businesses to operate, and it does provide lubricant for the economy. It's needed there. Okay. Questions about savings? Very important. All right, next thing is competition. This is also very important. All right, let me give you a definition for a competition. In this case, it's a contest among producers and consumers. Now, you might think, well, that's really stupid. Or that's very absurdly simple, but it doesn't have to be complicated. A contest among producers and consumers. I didn't put the word there between intentionally. It is not just the seller and the consumer competing. All of the sellers in the same industry are competing. All of the buyers in the same field are competing with each other. And then you also have the competition between the buyers and the sellers. So it's among them. All right? Can anybody think how all the producers in a certain industry are competing against each other? Yes, you're trying to explain how your gumballs aren't made with rare earth magnets. They won't stick to the fridge by themselves unless you chew them first. You're trying to get other people to buy your product and not theirs. Right? And that competition forces or it weeds out the inefficient producers, all right? Only the ones who can make something that people actually want to put in their mouth at a good price, those are the people that survive. Unless you're in the democratic world, then the producers who aren't any good complain that the good producers are cheating somehow, and you get the government to bail you out. But anyway, that's the Democrat thinking. So there's the consumers are competing against each other, trying to produce the best product at the best price, trying to get the consumers to come to them. How are the consumers competing? This is not always, if we're talking about gumballs, pretty much all of us can get as many gumballs as we wanted. All right, but you've probably seen footage of some Black Friday sale at Walmart where they have the 10 laptops for $150. And there is some serious competition amongst the consumers, right? To be the first 10 in line, or they start sleeping 4 days beforehand on the sidewalk outside. And it'd be easier to go get a part-time job. You could buy the laptop in less time. But there's that competition between the consumers wanting to buy the product. In some cases, there's a limited number. All right, so that's there. And then we have the competition across the two fields. We have the producers trying to get as much money from the consumers as they possibly can, and the consumers trying to get as much product from the producers with the least amount of money. So we have that competition. So that's why the word there, among, was intentional. A contest among producers and consumers, amongst those who are selling things and those who are buying things. That's the competition we're talking about. And that is vital to an economy. I was just subbing in the high school government economics class, and we were going back through some of the government regulations, the Interstate Commerce Act in 1887, then the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1890, and the book was given some of the justifications for those, and it was said it was to ensure economic competition. We're going to break up these large companies to make sure there's competition. If you apply that logic anywhere else, it repulses us and makes no sense. Imagine the NBA commissioner saying, to ensure basketball competition, we're going to force the Golden State Warriors to split up into 3 teams. Do you guys know? You guys follow that? They just won 73 games, broke the Bulls record. Okay, so anyway, they've had a very good season. All right, that's why I picked them. All right, we would scratch our heads and say, wait, why would we do that to the most successful team? Why are we going to break them up? Why not go to the team that lost 73 games and say, you guys maybe should try hockey next year? Pick a different field. Right? But in the economy, we go to the Golden State Warriors and we say, in the interest of competition, we're going to make you split up into 2 or 3 different teams. All right? It doesn't compute. In any other realm, this doesn't compute. But we've come to accept it as a society that, okay, it's fine. We want to make sure these companies don't get too big. And when there's mergers with major companies, they got to get approval by the government to make sure they don't become so large that they become this combination and restraint of trade, whatever exactly that is. There's this great fear, and really it's this very unfounded fear. Companies that become very large in a free market, okay, that's important, in a free market, means they're doing a good job. Because it is a free market. I mean, maybe you're an idiot, and you routinely try to find the worst product at the highest price. I don't know. Most people don't. There's a reason, as much as I am repulsed by Apple, there's a reason why they sell so many things for high prices, and they have stores and fancy locations because lots of people want to buy them. They produce a very good product. All right, there's a reason. And for the government to go to some company that says, "Oh, you've become so large, you're going to drive out all the other businesses." Well, that's kind of what competition is. Some people win, some people lose. So anyway, this idea of competition, it's vital. It's what produces the skill. The products we want. Imagine, go back 10 years and get rid of competition in the cell phone industry. And there's the government says we're going to whatever, no competition. Then you have the whole smartphone advent. You're all with me still. Right here. I mean, it was the competition. People wanted to produce better phones, trying to say they have something their competitors don't have. It was the competition that drove that whole thing, and it's still driving it. So anyway, competition is vital. It's what pushes the economy along, and there are losers, all right? I don't know who the Golden State Warriors beat in their last game. Anybody know? Whoever they are, they lost. Memphis, okay? They lost, and it happens. It would not really be competition as we think of it if the NBA just picked a panel of judges and the teams kind of did a shooting demonstration, some dribbling demonstrations, and they picked the best one. Wait a second, we got to let them compete. Right? That's what produces the skill. All right, without that, there's no skill. All right, so anyway, that is also important in our economy. We need to allow that competition. Liberals and socialists, they point to the losers, and not losers in the sense like incompetent, but people whose businesses go bankrupt, which might be incompetency. But they point to those people and say, look, we've got to do something. This is unfair. It would be just like the NBA saying, this is unfair that Memphis lost. I mean, come on, they won enough games. 72 is enough. Let's share those wins. We wouldn't accept that, but we do in the economy, and it really is a socialist mindset. So, all right. Next, I'm sorry. Let me mention one other thing before we talk about perfect and imperfect competition. So, competition does not mean that everything is legal. All right. So we are talking about competition within the rules. Right? If Golden State showed up and they had their billy clubs, and some guy had a pair of nunchucks, right? And they were cheating. That's a different story. We can't just say, "Oh, look, that's great competition." If they were in the Ultimate Fighting Championships or something, are those legal? And I don't know the thing of you, but you can't use nunchucks or billy clubs. Oh no, where do you get to use those? Just on the street? Okay, that's when the mugger's wanting your wallet. That's competition as well. If they show up and they're cheating, that's a different story. Okay, so it's completely valid if Apple starts infiltrating, electronic sabotage of all the other companies, and they send viruses to them and attack the whole structure of their company, and they slice in the tires of their employees. That's illegal. Okay, so we're not saying that just anything is legal. We are talking about playing within the rules. Sometimes people will say, oh, we can't let this competition go crazy because it'll drive these people to do all this illegal stuff. It's illegal. We need to punish them for doing the illegal stuff, not for being a successful business. So I want to point that out. All right, last thing with competition is perfect versus imperfect competition. And there are other ways to split this up if you ever look into competition. There's other different fields. But I'm just going to kind of point out the two extremes, and then there's this area in the middle that we can also partition. A situation that the economists call perfect competition and is one where there are many sellers, many buyers, and few, at least, outside forces influencing the situation. The major outside force would be the government, but it could be other things. Few outside forces. It's referred to as perfect competition because there you have a lot of people want to buy the product, you have a lot of people making the product, and the exchange is very free between them. To me, the classic example that always comes to mind is the agricultural industry. Right? We have, just in Indiana, I would imagine thousands and thousands of people that grow corn, right? And thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that eat corn. Right? So we've got lots of buyers, lots of producers, and a very free exchange between the two. All right, so that's considered perfect competition. If we don't have that situation, either we don't have a lot of sellers, don't have a lot of consumers, we don't have we have a lot of outside forces, then we enter into the realm of imperfect competition, and that's where one of those conditions isn't there. And there are lots of ways that can happen. Sometimes there's not a lot of sellers, not a lot of producers in a certain field, in a certain market. Can anybody think of a market where there's not a whole lot of people that produce that particular item?
Certain electric companies in certain areas, I know. almost have like a.
The power companies.
monopoly, yeah.
Yeah, they generally are granted a monopoly by the government, a very artificial thing. But yeah, they're the only producers. We have to buy our electricity from NIPSCO, unless you're going to go buy a big generator and do that route. But yeah, there's one producer. Okay, so that is we have one producer there. There's one that's a limited number of producers. We also have there really an outside force, the government forcing everybody to buy their electricity through that company. So okay, anything else? Think beyond gumballs and corn.
I have a question about NIPSCO having a monopoly on the power. If they can have a monopoly on that, why would the government not let other companies have a monopoly?
Well, the difference is the government granted them the permission to have that monopoly.
They made a law saying that.
You want me to explain the government? Come on now. I mean, it doesn't. The excuse is, well, we can't have 3 or 4 power companies. Can you imagine, if we had 4 power companies and we got 4 sets of power lines and, all this. The free market would handle it much better. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some regulation or something there because it is a very special field. But really, they've granted them that. I mean, they do the same type of thing often with trash pickup and other things. There's one company that does it for the whole town, and you have to deal with them.
Is that, I know it's a completely different company for me, so is it state by state or is it region?
Region by region, yeah. I mean, there's the NIPSCO, Northern Indiana Public Service Company. There's Chicago is Commonwealth Edison, I think. No. You're in the Chicago area, right? What's on your utility bill? Yeah, it goes by state, region by region. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Come on. Somebody can think of an industry where there's not a whole lot of people producing that certain thing. How many people build cruise ships? You do that in Illinois? Okay. And how many people buy cruise ships? Everybody. We should have 2 or 3. We need one on the mystery. Yeah, we need one on our lake. It would displace all of the water, but it would kind of take away the purpose of the lake. But it'd be easier to catch the fish for a short time. Airplanes. There are a decent number, but not as many as produce corn. Okay, and there's a whole lot of technicalities involved with building an airplane. Things you want to get right. If you have a bad year and some of your corn doesn't grow, it's not a big deal. But if you have a bad year and your planes crash, that's. Right, so there are natural barriers that cause some industries to not have a lot of producers. Right? Sometimes it's the technical expertise to do it. Sometimes it's a financial commitment to get involved with it. I've never really thought about it, but how would you start building cruise ships? I mean, think about all of the stuff you have to have to just be able to start offering the fact that I'm going to build cruise ships. I mean, that's another one I think about. Imagine trying to start FedEx. Being able to advertise, we'll take your package anywhere in the country by tomorrow. I mean, just to be able to run that advertisement means you got to have the whole infrastructure there, and then you start selling. It's a major commitment up front. So anyway, some industries have natural barriers for people getting involved, and it limits the number of producers. So it's not necessarily that we use this word perfect and imperfect, but it's really not to imply that it's better to have everything like the corn industry and the FedEx, UPS world is somehow bad. But it's really just a term that economists have come up with. And there's a sliding scale between them, differentiating between different markets. But we'll leave it there. Okay. I should mention one thing here with this imperfect competition. The government usually gets very, very worried when there are few producers in a certain industry. That's where you get that combination and restraint of trade and other things. They start getting very worried. An unfounded worry, all right. They always talk about, somebody's going to get a monopolistic position over a certain industry, and then they're going to jack prices up. They're going to squash all the competition. This is like so fat that they're going to roll around and kill them or something. I don't know. They bring up all this crazy rhetoric. And the problem is this never, ever happened anywhere in the history of the world. In a free market. We have NIPSCO and Baltimore Gas and Electric and other places will have a monopoly and they squash the competition and there's no trade. We have that in an imposed position. But in a free market, it's never happened. There have been companies that get nearly to that monopolistic position, but they only maintain it by keeping their prices lower than anybody else that wants to dare compete with them. Right? So that they get very worried about it, very ungrounded fear. I think we talked the other day about the government all of a sudden getting worried about cows jumping over the moon, so they start weighting them down or something. So wait, it's never happened. And we could say the same thing here. Show me the example. All right, Rockefeller, we talked about, this is a robber baron. He was producing kerosene. And I should look the numbers up again, I've forgotten. But when he got to this position where he's about 95% of all of the oil refining in the country, he controlled. The price of kerosene, which was the major product at that point, went from $1 something down to about 20 cents during this time that he was abusing America with his monopoly. I want someone to abuse America with a firearms production monopoly or something. Cut the price by a fifth. I mean, it's really, he's often looked at. He was one of the first companies our government went after as being this evil monopoly. So it's never happened, is the point. All right, competition, very, very important. Next thing, let's at least introduce the topic. We're not going to be able to finish it, but let's at least introduce it. Next thing we're going to talk about is factors of production. Factors of production. Oh, we might be able to get them in. All right, what I mean by this is if we look at a nation or a region and we want to try to figure out what things are there that are going to allow them to produce things. What are the factors that are needed to produce things? Some of these I think are fairly obvious, but I think it's worth, this is kind of the classical way that they're split up into categories. I'm sure we could split them up differently, but this is the classical way. All right, the first one is natural resources. If you're living on Guam, you're limited. What's the island that the crazy French dictator got sent to out in the South Pacific, South Atlantic? Is that the one by Italy or the?
Are we talking about Napoleon?
Napoleon in the Atlantic.
That's to the Elbe.
Was it Elbe out in the Atlantic?
It's not the Atlantic. It's right off the coast.
Oh, but the second time he got sent away. Well, anyway, pick some little rocky island out in the middle of the ocean, and you have very limited natural resources. Okay, so it's a very valid point. You've got to have natural resources to be able to produce things from them. So, again, economically speaking, some things that cause a natural resources to be different from other things. You know, is Jacob a natural resource? Is his laptop a natural resource? You know, what do I mean by this? So it's just a couple of distinguishing characteristics by what we mean by natural resource. I think we have kind of this intuitive idea, but to put a little fingers on it here, it's something that can't be expanded or increased. You know, we have oil, and it's there. So we might find more of it, but we're not making oil currently. You have a certain amount of surface area of land. You know, that's it. We could, maybe fill in swamps or something, but it's pretty much, it's something that's not expanded or contracting. Or not expanding at least, fixed amount. And the second thing is it's something that's not man-made. You know, the laptops in the room are man-made. They use natural resources, but they're not man-made.
So I'm sorry, it's something that can or cannot be
Can't be expanded. It's something fixed that we get out of the earth. That's the idea. So. All right, this is listed here as one of the factors of production, and obviously it's needed. Right? If you decide you want to go into coal mining and stay in Porter County, you're going to have to dig an awful deep tunnel. Down in southern Indiana, there's some coal mines, but That's a long ways, right, to get to the coal. It might be cheaper. I don't know. You're really limited. All right, so this is extremely important. You got to have these, but it is not the only thing that's needed. Right? There's some other resources. There are countries that have lots of natural resources that live in extreme poverty. All right, so this isn't the only thing. Some people will say, "Oh, America's just wealthy," or Canada, or whatever country you want to pick, because they just have wealth because they kind of hit this jackpot of natural resources. All right, that it is true. You got to have the natural resources, but there are other people that have those resources and they're barely surviving. I mean, look at North Korea. I just heard they had a failed rocket launch this morning, or whenever it was. I heard about this morning. They wanted to celebrate some anniversary in the. I didn't hear what exactly happened, if the rocket blew up on the stand or just fell over, or like a fireworks display where the rocket lands facing a crowd. I don't know what happened, but they were just talking about how it was kind of embarrassing for them to have this celebration where they're launching a new rocket go bad. But they have natural resources, but I mean they're barely surviving there, right? So it is true that these resources are important. You've got to have them, but it is not the only thing. We could plop people down on top of a gold mine that's under the mountain, or a mountain with gold in it, and they'll walk away and say there's nothing here. But other people plop them there, and they're going to dig down and find it and walk away rich people. So the resources are important, but it's not the only factor. There's some other things that have to be factored in, to not use the same word too many times. So, all right. So anyway, part of the free market system does a very good job of utilizing these resources to their highest capacity. Right? The Soviet Union had tons of natural resources, but they were a communist nation. Right? We had to sell them grain so they wouldn't starve to death. Right? They were not using them very efficiently. So anyway, it is true that we have to have resources to produce things, but it is not true that this is the only thing. Mexico is not having major economic problems because of lack of resources. It's other factors. So, all right, there are three more: capital, labor, and then labor as in people working. And then the one that you might not think of right offhand is management or entrepreneurial ability. Somebody like Steve Jobs who can take an idea and turn it into a major international company. But we can hit those three next time. And then Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations. I know you're excited. Some of you are thinking, I've got another cut day. I can skip that one. So, see you next week.